Hello, everybody, and welcome to Horror Movie Yearbook. I am Willie, and with me is my just hell of a guy.
Thanks.
Just hell of a guy. My co-host, Mr. Tim Long. Tim,
Yes.
how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. You know what?
Good.
Tigers are in the playoff race right now.
For real. I don't follow baseball too much. So
No.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
so they weren't bad all year. I would say mediocre. I don't think people use the term mediocre enough or correctly anymore. Like some people will call a mediocre movie bad.
So when you say mediocre, do you mean average?
Like just below average.
Just
kind of
below
like
average.
middling to below average is my definition, and I believe the proper definition to mediocre. So the Tigers were about like 10 games under, like 500 for most of the season.
Sure.
They were just kind of, and then all of a sudden now they're like on fire, and
Nice.
they're winning games in like extra innings. It's insane. And I like baseball when my team is good.
You're a fair weather baseball guy.
A little bit.
Sure,
Like
that's fine.
I like baseball, but I have to be invested in it. You know what I mean? Like I have to have a team to root for.
I'm a fair weather fan with every sport.
Got it.
So yeah. So like I'm not judging, and
Yeah.
You know what? Let's be honest. If you're a sports fan out there, there is some sport that you're only a fair weather fan for. Let's not pretend like
Yeah.
we're not guilty of that.
Right.
We all are at some point. So.
But rarely am I ever going to throw on a random like Yankees and Braves game in the middle of the season. It's not going to happen. I have to watch it. But yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's going good. I heard 2 songs on the way over here. On 105.1.
You have a short drive, 2 songs.
2 songs, and they were both "Still Fly" by the Big Timers,
Okay, okay.
Boots,
Yep.
and then "Rub You the Right Way" by Johnny Gill.
Oh my goodness!
Oh man, 2 songs that I was just like jamming out to both of them.
Wow,
2 of my
So
favorites.
you started out the night pretty well.
Yeah, I was like,
style.
"Rub You the Right Way."
Nice.
Johnny Gill was New Edition, right?
I saw you were giving me eyes earlier. I get it now.
In my
yeah,
head, I was
believe-
thinking "Rub You the Right Way" by
Yeah.
Johnny Gill.
New Edition. Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got a favorite New Edition
group.
song?
No, I don't.
Candy Girl.
Probably Candy Girl,
Yeah.
but I don't like love. I get it's used well in Dogma.
Yes, it is.
Yes, my favorite use of Candy Girl. Anyway, we are here.
It's with the Salma Hayek scene, right?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely. That,
indeed.
yes.
Yes, sir. I believe she has a lollipop in that scene.
I believe you're
which
right.
is pretty great. Anyway, we're moving on. Yes, we are here tonight to continue. I guess kind of a series we've been doing. It's two is a series, right?
Yeah.
So a series we've been doing about our top 10s.
And I think we're planning on continuing it,
I think
too.
we're going to keep rolling through it. We started with the 70s.
Yep.
With our last episode, go check that out if you have not. And today is probably the hardest day, not just in the history of this show for Tim and I, but perhaps in all of podcasting for Tim and I. This
Podcasting, period.
of
Yes.
all podcasts. And we are covering our top 10 horror films from the 1980s. This was brutal. But before we torture ourselves...
And I'll never be happy with this list, by the way.
No. We'll see. I might be making changes as we go. This could be an embarrassing listen.
I made changes like 2 hours beforehand, and I said, "This is it. I'm done."
Yeah, I did too. I was making mental changes in line today, or when I was running the donut booth
Yeah.
at the
fall fair.
the fall fair
Yeah.
for my child's
I walked by.
elementary school.
I walked by
You
with,
saw the line I was dealing
with my son in the stroller. First of all, big mistake on our part because he was just screaming. He's like,
He
"Why
wanted to
can't
get in
I
there.
be there?"
Yeah,
he was like turned around.
You should have let him in, dude.
No, he needed to get back and
Gotcha.
get his bath in. Anyway, but I saw the line that you were dealing with, and I went,
Yes.
"Oh," because I thought like, maybe I'll stop by, see if like I can wave or like say hi to Willie and Nikki up there. And then
I was sweating.
I'm not going anywhere near that madhouse.
No, it was a lot. It was fun, but I'm happy to have volunteered to help out. So, but it was exhausting. Anyway, so we are doing our top 10 of the 1980s tonight. We've got a lot of top 10s from our listeners to get into.
Yes.
I don't want to waste too much time ahead of time, but if you would like to send in your top 10 of the 1980s, it's not too late.
Or
Send it
70s
in.
if you want.
Or 70s, yeah. Send it in.
Don't
Send
do
it
the 90s yet. We're not there yet.
Yep. Don't get ahead of us. Or if you want to send it in, we will read it off after we do the 90s. That's fine. Send us in your top 10 of these decades. Horrormovieyearbook@gmail.com is my favorite place to get feedback.
Especially because you can expand on your a little more.
It's kind of my favorite place, except with the exception of our Discord,
Yeah,
obviously,
I like it.
Midwest Podnet. Check us out on Discord. You can join up. I think it's you can pay $1 a month. I think is.
Yeah, I think you can access the Discord for $1 a month.
Yeah,
and,
so
even if you want to just test it out, give us $1 and
hop on.
you'll get it. Yep.
Hop on. Jump on Sinister Lists. But we are also on Twitter at HM Yearbook. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. You can find us on Horror Movie Yearbook on any of those social media platforms. Yeah, so I want to start digging into some of our lists here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start with friend of the show, one of my faves.
Yes.
Joe.
Yeah, Joe.
The great.
He sent us a 70s
Great
list.
Joe.
Yes.
Yes, this is going to be, we have an 80s list here. Top 10.
Yep.
And now he said, this is an order. Now, here's the thing. There's no numbers here, so I don't know.
I'm guessing.
I think it's
I'm gonna
10
go,
to 1.
Okay, so you think he's starting with The Shining at 10?
At 10, I think. Right?
I don't know.
Joe.
For some reason, I think he's starting with The Shining at 1.
Okay.
Do you want me to get clarification real quick?
Can you text Joe as we're on air?
Absolutely can, yes.
Okay, so I will, while you're doing that,
Yes.
I'm going to mention some of Joe's comments below his list. He said, this was insane, by the way. Yes, Joe. Agreed. Honorable mention for me goes to Beetlejuice. Sequel just came out.
Beetlejuice.
Heard it's quite delightful. And Little Shop of Horrors, also great.
Yeah, I was surprised, but the reviews were pretty
Pretty strong.
pretty strong for Beetlejuice.
Yeah,
But,
I'm excited.
Shining is number 1.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. The Evil Dead fans are furious, I'm sure. These are strictly movies that I go back to time and time again. Can't wait for the episode from you guys. Let's get nuts. Nice. All right, so starting at number 10 and moving upwards towards, spoiler alert, The Shining. We have Halloween 3,
Yes.
Season of the Witch at 10.
Yeah.
At number 9, we have Cujo. Okay, nice.
Cujo, yeah.
Interesting.
I can't do Cujo anymore. As
It's
a dog
hard.
owner, I can't do it.
As a parent and a pet owner, it's very hard.
I had never read. Yeah, honestly, you just probably as a person too. Like it's tougher, but like
It's tough.
I had never read Cujo before. Like
It's dark.
I tried. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make it past that first
The
chapter.
POV.
Oh god.
Yeah, it's too much. Yeah. At number 8, we have The Thing.
Yep. John Carpenter's The Thing.
That's right. At number 7, we have The Fly, David Cronenberg's.
Yes.
Back-to-back remakes. I
Yeah.
believe both released in 82, I think.
But I think The Fly was a little later.
No, that was later. Yeah. But still.
Yep.
We have Child's Play at number 6. We have Christine at number 5. I
Good,
like
good,
the...
yes.
We've got some serious Carpenter and Stephen King representation here in this list.
I do love Christine.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I really think it's
Great use of music.
that and In the Mouth of Madness are the most underrated Carpenter movies.
I would agree,
No
yeah.
question. And I think Prince of Darkness is still a little underrated.
I kind of think like
There's been a bit of a
there was, and then it's kind of weirdly gone away in the
know.
last few years. I don't know. It's weird.
yeah. At number 4, we have Poltergeist. At 3, we have Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, and 2 is the original Friday the 13th.
Okay.
Nice. He's representing the OG installments
yes.
here. And at number 1, we had The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Joe, you're always a delight. Thank you.
Do you like
so
The Shining
much.
movie better or The Shining book? I'll just say I like the book better.
I like the. It's kind of equal for me.
Okay.
I
like The Shining movie. It's not my favorite.
I like them both, for different reasons. Neither one of them are my favorite King movie or King book. Neither one of them are particularly my favorite top list of any category. Really, I like both. That's about it.
Okay.
I don't feel the need to reread The Shining.
Right.
Or I would rewatch The Shining, I think.
Yeah.
If I ever decide to read Dr. Sleep, I don't think I'm going to, though. I love that movie so much.
Yeah, I don't know
that
if
I'm kind of good with not.
Yeah, I was going to say I've read Dr. Sleep and watched the movie, and I didn't dislike Dr. Sleep, but I actually think the movie improves that book a lot.
Flanagan, baby.
Yep.
I can't wait for that.
He's got a new King. He's got a new King adaptation coming out with Tom Hiddleston. It's called like The Life of Chuck. It's based on one of King's short stories.
Short stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll probably be great. I'm sure.
So are
All
we
right.
doing what we were referring to as Alex's bullshit next?
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Unfortunately,
Joe.
somebody had to send us the
Joe, can't
founder.
believe Motel Hell wasn't on there, but
Oh man, shots fired. Unfortunately, to stop our top 10 lists already because the founder
yeah.
had to send, as he says, yet another correction, as if he's annoyed. Yet another. My goodness. Giada De Laurentiis is the granddaughter of Dino.
What did you say?
The daughter, I think.
Okay.
Dino's daughter, Veronica, is Giada's mom. I'm so happy you know so much about the De Laurentiis family tree, Alex. Keep it up. No, I'm not kidding.
So
Cut it
we'll
out.
do his top 10.
Yeah, I guess we'll read his top 10.
But last time
for the content.
we skipped his list of shame last time, and I'm so angry at him, and I'm so annoyed with him.
Yeah.
We're gonna do his list
Share
of
it.
shame this
Share
time.
it.
Yeah. So he
Truly
says,
shame him.
Alex says it's been a while since I watched a lot of these, so my ranking is dubious at best. But here goes. Number 10. I'm so happy this movie is on Alex's list. Sleepaway Camp.
Oh my God. Now Alex was present and I think active, right? During our commentary.
Was Alex on the commentary? Yeah.
He was there,
Yes.
certainly. It's been years now. That was pre-COVID.
That was pre-COVID, yes.
My
God, that was
goodness.
early on, I think.
It was a different life.
Like a year or two.
Yes, Gojo was on that one.
Gojo, because we were showing Gojo that movie
He
for the
was
first time.
he was the virgin viewer. Yes, and what a viewing.
Number 9, he's got Poltergeist.
Okay.
Number 8, he has the original Friday the 13th.
Oh, nice. I want to ask him at some point about why the original, because he's seen more than the original at this point.
Well, spoiler alert, he's got another one coming.
I did not read lists ahead of time because I'm excited to. Yeah.
Number 7, Evil Dead 2. Number 6, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which I just watched.
My man.
I told you on. So he does have another one. I texted you. Friday the 13th was last Friday, and I was in the mood. Like the kid was in
What'd
bed.
you watch for?
So I did a randomizer. I put like random number generator, and the first thing that popped up was 9. And
I was gonna say, is there? I was
not.
just gonna say, is there a movie that would have popped up where you would have click again?
That was the only one
Just
in my
9?
head. Because my wife was down there with me too, and like my wife can, but like she doesn't like Jason Goes to Hell. And I honestly, that's the closest one
It sucks.
that I don't like. There are parts I'll watch it,
The effects are great.
but on Friday the 13th, it wasn't the one. It also doesn't have Jason in it. I guess the original doesn't either, but until it does. But you know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
It doesn't have
I don't know.
Jason Goes to Hell is not what I wanted to watch on Friday the 13th.
No, it's,
so
it's not a Friday the 13th movie.
So the next one was 4, and I went, hell yeah. 4 is, I would say 4 maybe is the quintessential Friday the 13th.
If somebody asks me, and I've said this before, I think on the show, if somebody goes, I want to get into Friday the 13th, what do I watch to see,
Yeah.
if, like, to gauge my 4?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like 4, there's no reason to continue
Yes.
because it's got elements of kind of everything that comes before and after the. It's
Yes.
It is the pinnacle of that early,
Yeah,
like what a Friday the 13th movie is. Yeah.
absolutely. Number 5, The Evil Dead 1.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the
Oh, he's
Evil
got
Dead.
one above 2.
He does have one above 2.
You know what? Between that and final chapter, I'm close to forgiving him.
Number 4, The Lost Boys. Number 3, Aliens. So I made the call because Bruce asked us too if Aliens count as a horror movie, and I just said, yeah, it's on the border. I probably think it's more sci-fi action than
Well,
horror.
okay. I thought about this, Tim, because it may or may not be on my list.
Yeah.
I thought about this, and I said to myself, Dawn was on my 70s list.
Yeah, okay.
Dawn is arguably just as much an action-adventure movie as it is a horror film.
Okay.
There's really not a lot of scares in Dawn.
Right.
There's gore,
Right.
but how scary is Dawn of the Dead?
Yeah. All right. I said yes, so I'm in agreement with you.
Yes, I'm just...
But I can.
That was-
I would have allowed like someone to go. I don't consider it a horror movie, so it's not on my list.
Sure.
Number 2, I do think this one is. Now, this is an example of the first one definitely a horror movie. Second one, not a horror movie.
Oh, okay.
The Terminator. Terminator 2 is an action movie.
Agreed.
Yeah. And number 1 for Alex is The Thing. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
His list
He's
of
got
shame.
hard on for Cameron.
Yeah. His list of shame. Here we go.
Oh, man.
Halloween 2, Halloween
Stuff
3.
he's not seen.
Stuff he has not seen, excuse me. Yes. So this is stuff he has not seen that he thinks.
2 and 3. 2, you don't need to. You don't need to see.
No,
either
I
one
don't
of
think
those,
so.
technically.
Oh,
but
Halloween 3, absolutely.
You should see 3.
Fright Night. I think, and Dave
I think you
Steele
dig that, yeah.
reached out and said, like,
Borrow one of my
gotta
copies,
watch it.
yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
Dave Steele has 30
Dave Steele's
copies
the
of
best.
Fright Night. Like,
I saw Dave Steele in Pennsylvania.
yeah, yes.
The best.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the best. I love him.
And then Vampire Hunter D. You know what? That's a blind spot for me. That's on my list of shame. Maybe Alex and I should get together and watch Vampire Hunter D.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been years, but.
Near Dark. Alex should see Near Dark.
Oh, yeah.
And then this one, you know what? I'm going to put this at the top of Alex's list of shame to check out. Prince of Darkness. I actually think Alex would dig Prince of Darkness quite a bit.
Yes. So, yeah, Near Dark, Prince of Darkness, and
Fright Night.
Fright Night, I think, would be.
He hasn't seen Nightmare on Elm Street either.
I don't even think that's top tier for me in terms of what he should.
In
see.
what
Yeah.
Alex, knowing Alex's taste, I would agree.
I think Near Dark he'd be super into.
Me too.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great movie.
Cool. Well, thank you, and screw you, Alex.
Yeah. Both. No, we love you, buddy.
I know. Just checking.
But also, cut it out.
All right. You want to do? All right. So we have 3 more here: Jason's, Bruce's, or Dave's. Who do you want to hear next?
Let's go Dave's.
Dave, no particular order. So he starts with the Terminator, Fright Night.
Nice.
I would say, knowing Dave, I'm just gonna say I think Fright Night might be his number 1. But
He certainly collected a lot of them.
The Fly,
Yep.
The Thing, The Lost Boys. We're starting to see a pattern here with some of these. American Werewolf in London, The Hitcher. Ooh, that's a new one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You a Hitcher fan? I like The Hitcher.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you like the remake?
You know what? I don't recall enough to have a. Who was in that?
Sean Bean is the Hitcher.
Bean is the Hitcher. That's right.
He's pretty good. The movie kind of is like,
It's kind of-
why did we make this?
What
Yeah.
was that? Platinum Dunes?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Maniac. Absolutely.
whoa, get it.
Absolutely. Evil Dead 2
Yep.
and Reanimator. Reanimator's a fun
Love
one.
it.
Yes.
That's a
He's-
great list.
Honorable mention. He says Little Shop of Horrors. He's thought about replacing Lost Boys with Little Shop. Because I already have Fright Night, but I couldn't not have Lost Boys. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I get that. Yep.
So there you go. I do. Little Shop of Horrors is a lot of fun. That's the second time. I think Joe had that on his honorable mention too.
Yes.
Let's do Bruce's next.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we'll start at the bottom. Number 10, The Fog. And
That was 1980.
I think that's
Wow.
an underrated Carpenter. The Fog. Next month is a classic October movie.
It's
for me.
such a great Halloween. Yeah. I forgot that was 1980.
Mm-hmm.
I always think about 79 for some reason because they shot it in 79, I think.
Yep.
Man, that's a good pick. Yeah, I like that.
Number 9, From Beyond. Stuart Gordon.
It's been years. I think I remember enjoying it, but it's
My
been a long
favorite
time.
is actually of those Stuart Gordon. Those early Stuart Gordon is a Reanimator.
Yeah.
Number 8, Prince of Darkness. Oh, we see that one's been pretty consistent on.
It has.
Oh wait. Well, I guess number 7, Hellraiser. I think that's our first Hellraiser.
It is.
Yep.
Yes. Hellraiser. Yeah. Wow. It's a movie.
Number 6, Videodrome. It's a movie.
Another first too.
He's got back-to-back Cronenberg's here because he got The Fly. So The Fly, I think, has been on.
Bruce, you are twisted, bro.
Number 4, The Terminator. Number 3, this is my favorite choice so far because I didn't put this on my list. Spoiler, but it was close. The Beyond.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably Fulci's greatest movie.
It's my favorite. Yeah.
I love Zombie, but Zombie is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I still love it. The Beyond is very much it's Fulci's movie
Mm-hmm.
through and through. It's not trying to be a sequel or a copy anything that's come before. It's very much doing its own thing.
It's also not trying to make any sense at all, which I respect.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like that. Like when I think of Italian horror from that era, I think of The Beyond and I think of Suspiria.
Yep.
Those are the two. Like, here you go. Watch those. Yeah.
Number 2, Aliens, and number 1, The Thing. So The Thing is pretty high up on a lot
Pretty
of these
consistent.
lists.
Yep.
And then finally, Jason's here, and then we're going to get into ours. First off, let's do his honorable mentions to Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead, Child's Play, Videodrome, Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 3. Good for you, Jason.
Oh, he tied them up?
Yep.
Jason, you dog, you.
Little Shop of Horrors, The Evil Dead 2, The Blob, hell yeah, Near Dark, Hellraiser, Possession's on my honorable mention.
Oh,
list.
shit.
Yes.
Right. Man. Oh, sorry.
Prince of Darkness, and Day of the Dead. And he said that's a lot of honorable mentions, but it's a great decade for horror, absolutely.
I think it's the best decade for horror.
I
Just my
Yeah, I think.
personal opinion. But yeah.
But yeah, Jason he's got some wild shit on this list. All right. Number 10, Poltergeist. Number 9, Pet Sematary, our first Pet Cemetery.
Nice.
Number 8, Cannibal Holocaust.
So, yeah, what's funny about Cannibal Holocaust is nothing's funny about it. But no, what's funny about that being on the list is I discovered Cannibal Holocaust pretty late in the game, and I watched it on a computer, like a shitty monitor, and it made it scarier for me because like the video quality was not great.
Yeah,
and it was like somehow
it's like a snuff film.
It made it feel like I was watching like real, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I have rewatched it once since then, and I think it's like really good, like really well made. But it's so nasty that I kind of have a hard time going back to it. So it's tough for me to like put it on the list. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just my personal, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Good for Jason. We can't tell you what to put on your list.
No, I love it. I think it's great.
Number 7.
Soundtrack's fantastic too.
Yes. The Terminator is number 7. Number 6, Aliens. Number 5, Predator.
Okay.
I think I have Predator on my honorable mention, but I didn't know. Predator was one in my head. I went, I think I can disqualify this one for me because it feels more like science fiction action.
I was comfortable keeping Aliens on my list. I did not. I love Terminator and Predator. I did not count them as enough as horror films for me. Maybe I'm being unfair, but they did not make the cut.
Predator is action and then science fiction and then horror to me in my head. Like
right.
That's the tier. Yeah. Number 4, They Live. That is so They Live was another one that I went in my head. I go, that feels like a science fiction movie. And I had enough representation from a certain director on my list that I went.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't want to just make it a full Carpenter list.
I think we both got a couple of those.
Number 3, The Thing. Number 2, The Shining. And number 1, The Fly. So The Fly is all on all of these lists, I think.
That's the most consistent movie, I think.
And
so. The Thing is pretty consistent,
The Thing is pretty consistent, too. So, and both 80s remakes of 50s movies, but from directors whose influences probably came from going to watch those
both movies that got kind of crapped on critically because it was like, oh, it's just a slashery, gory version of what came before. And then people went on to go like, oh, wow, these are like incredible and better than the originals. So, yeah. So, eat it.
So, all right. Are you ready to do this? So I want to start this off. I don't think I did by saying these are our 10 favorite movies of the 1980s. We do not think these are the best movies of the 1980s.
No.
A couple of these I can't even...
Horror films.
Films. That's the other. Yes. So these are the ones that we hold dear and are our 10 favorites from the 1980s. Yes. That's why we want to hear your favorites of the 1980s. We don't want to hear what you think are the best. We want to hear your favorites.
Indeed.
Because I do think there's a slight difference, unless like there isn't. But there are a couple movies I would never defend on my list as like the best movies of the 1980s, but they hold a special place for me.
That's fair.
Do you want to get us started here? Do you want me to put you on the spot?
My number 10 from 1987, we have Near Dark. It's a movie that came later to me. This was not an easily accessible film pre-internet, and I wound up finding a copy. I'd heard about it for years, about how great this vampire movie is from the 80s, blah, 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 blah. I had seen Lost Boys at this point, and I had seen Fright Night at this point, kind of the other two big 80s vampire films, in my opinion. And I was like, man, I got to see this movie Near Dark. Loved Bill Paxton. I saw that like Lance Henriksen was in there. I was just like, I was super into the idea of checking this out. And I found a copy of, I don't think it's Anchor Bay. It was like a special edition 2-disc DVD thing.
Yeah.
Used at FYE. And it was out of print. And I was like, I'm buying this. And it was like $28. And I was like, I got to buy it. Because you couldn't find this movie anywhere else. And watched it and went, oh my God, somehow this lives up to the hype.
Right.
I think Near Dark is... I think it's kind of perfect in what it's doing.
You like Catherine Bigelow too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's fantastic.
Amazing. I'm trying to think of a Catherine Bigelow film I don't like.
You like Strange Days?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. What was the last movie she did? Was it Zero Dark 30? Am I blanking on it?
No, she went after that for sure.
Okay.
I'm a fan of her work. And this is her first feature. And just like the cast is like it.
She did Detroit.
Yes, which I like too.
Yep.
That one's got kind of some critical back and forth, but I liked it a lot. But what I love about Near Dark is that I like vampire films that take the idea that the vampire has been around so long in so many different cultures and variations that it's kind of tired to me. In the same way that zombies have become tired a little bit in the last decade, 2 decades. Making vampires interesting or scary is not easy to do anymore, in my opinion.
Right.
It takes an interpretation we haven't seen before. Near Dark feels like if vampires existed, it would probably be a lot like what we're seeing here. And that makes it scarier because I'm like, I could conceivably see how these vampires in Near Dark like would live their life, or I guess, are they living? I don't know. Are they dead? Whatever. They would exist without being outed or caught or
right.
This makes sense to me, and it's almost like what if the Manson family was like a group of vampires in a lot of ways, like they're these nomads and these like kind of like on the fringe people and stuff, and like it's not a secret that Bill Paxton is my favorite actor of all time, and he is so good in this movie. And he's not even like, he's like the third or fourth like in the list of like build.
Yeah.
He's so good and he's scary as hell. The second he walked, there's a scene in a bar. That's like the standout scene. I won't even go into detail, but like he is so menacing in that scene, and like he's so good. I don't know.
I think that's one of the great scenes in horror, and especially like horror that decade, that bar scene.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's incredible. So yeah, Near Dark is just like, there's so much going on. And the only knock on Near Dark, I would say, is a little bit of the love story feels very kind of romance novel-y. So at times, it feels a little bit of its time.
Yes.
But I think it still works. I think there's an earnestness to the performances of the two leads where I like, okay.
And I think that works well in a vampire movie, because vampire movies are kind of like
there's
that.
There's some romance.
Yeah, vampire stories are kind of like that, yeah.
But yeah, love that movie. Yeah. Near Dark, 10.
All right. So my number 10. I had this. So I had this narrowed down to 12 movies, and I kind of matched up my 10 and 9 versus the 2 I left off.
I had 14. It was close.
And this one matched up against Dream Warriors, and I just went with it because as I was going back and forth between the two, I went, God, like, they're so, like, all right, I'm just going to say it. My number 10 is Society.
Oh, my God.
Brian Usna's Society. So,
Tim.
All right.
This is amazing.
I had it over Dream Warriors. It went out over Dream Warriors. And I'm not going to badmouth.
But why?
Okay. So I mentioned on the 70s podcast that I like, and I'm sure like a lot of people my age, frequented message boards. And one of them like was the Chud Creature Corner message boards back in the day.
Classic.
And there was always like kind of like a running bit between certain posters about the shunting. And I had never heard of the shunting. I had never seen Society.
Which is a thing from Society.
Yes.
We won't spoil, because a lot of people have not seen Society.
Here's what I want to say about the shunting. I had heard about it, and I had never like seen it. And then all of a sudden, like, I came across this movie. I tracked it down somehow, either at a video store. It was a while. Yeah. It was a while ago for the first time I watched it. And I'm going to tell you right now, like nothing, like you can't be prepared for the shunting. It is one of the more insane things. And this is a weird ass movie the entire way through.
But it gets really.
And I have a soft spot for gooiness. And this is like the wettest, gooeyest movie like ending I can think of. And it's one of those movies too. So
the social commentary is like on point though.
That's another reason I like it. It's similar in some ways to a couple of it's very much taking on yuppies, taking on like 80s yuppies. It comes at the tail end of the 80s, the tail end of the Reagan era.
Yeah. What year was this?
this was 89.
Nice.
Society was 89. And Yuzna had worked on Reanimator and From Beyond. Reanimator was another honorable mention for me. But like, I also love movies like Blue Velvet too. Like is a movie I think of too from the 80s. That are about these kind of like creepy, kind of perverted underworlds under like that are presented as this wholesome America, and that's what the Society is. And I am drawn to that type of movie. Yeah. So I think with Dream Warriors, like Dream Warriors is a blast, but like I picked Society because of that reason, and also like it's just such a weird movie. So much of the dialogue doesn't feel like it's written by like a normal human being. Like it's
not.
No, it's not like what I wrote it down a lot. Oh, it's just weird. We're just one big happy family, except for a little incest and psychosis. But it's got that kind of like that late 80s like Heathers thing too to it, where it's got like that kind of biting dialogue that I've always kind of liked.
Yep.
And then we do get to see, like they say butthead a lot, and then we do discover like there's an actual butthead at the end, like a guy.
It's true.
It has his face where the butt used to be. I don't think it's so. They Live is the one I kind of compare it to, social commentary wise too.
They're very different movies though.
Definitely different movies. I don't think it's as. I don't know if it's as like. I don't know if it has as much to say as They Live does.
So when you're comparing the two, I think like with with They Live, I always think like this is like a warning,
right?
Like, hey, this is happening, and if we don't do something, it's going to be. There's a sense of hope. Carpenter did that a lot. With Society, it's like
they're here. It's happening. You're getting shunted. And you know what? It's also, as I've gotten older, I've realized that rich people are just mad perverts. They're insane perverts.
Sure. They're bored. I mean, they're
bored. They have so much money. So like
let's do weird shit.
That hits differently as I've gotten older too. So yeah, you know what? I was on the borderline, but now I've convinced myself the shunting belongs on my top 10.
Honestly.
Yes.
Yeah. If Bezos could shunt, he would shunt.
Do you? Yeah.
It's not possible.
Do you think there is some rich people? Do you think if we showed Bezos Society, he would?
I'm going to find out a way to do this.
He would immediately.
Him and Musk, yeah.
Go into the, so anyway, Society is my number 10. What's your number 9, Willie?
Creepshow.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's a good.
So Creepshow is just like, man, it's a genre classic. Like, it's a love letter to, but it's a love letter by, really 3 of the greats in the horror world as a whole. We've got Stephen King, George Romero, and Tom Savini. Like, what a trio! Like, how often can you say that you have like that much talent behind a project in the way that this one has? And it's a love letter to I think oftentimes forgotten by a lot of people, universe of horror storytelling in the EC Comics.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the reasons those are not hard to like collect anymore. I don't think.
So I have searched for those like digitally too, and it's like they're not easy to get.
Yeah, it's sad.
Of.
You know. Yeah. It's.
But so like you see a lot of movies today where I find that EC Comics morality, those morality tales, and I think they're probably influenced by stuff like Creepshow. But then Creepshow, like it all ties back.
Sure.
Too.
There's kind of like a lineage to it, and I loved EC Comics, and I read a lot of it. Vault of Horror. All
Tales from the Crypt was the EC comic too, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is as far as anthology horror, and there's a lot of anthology horror. Like in terms of anthology storytelling, I think horror probably has every other genre beat. And Creepshow is the pinnacle. Like for my money, it can't be beat. It's tough to do an anthology because you have to keep the audience's interest and pace these segments that are these mini movies essentially, like throughout the course of it. And I think Creepshow does it perfectly. I used to get weirdly bored as a kid with the final because the crate is so great.
Yes.
As a kid, they're creeping up and you kind of like lost me a little bit as a kid because it's kind of like slower to start with. Now I'm like, this is the way to do it. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
yeah, Creepshow is just it's masterful, and it's three. And I'm not trying to like, I feel like masterful or like masters of their craft gets thrown around a lot, but like legitimately, like those three guys are the top tier of what they did.
Yep.
And it's all three of them firing on all cylinders at the top of their game and creating something really unique and awesome and indelible on the genre. So yeah, Creepshow's number 9. It's fantastic.
Very nice. All right, so this one I did another kind of pick 'em with this one, and I left off Near Dark, actually. I would say Near Dark is like my number 11. But this is An American Werewolf in London. Dave mentioned this. It basically just came down to I like werewolves better. It also came down to I like the romantic aspect of this movie better than Near Dark.
Yep.
And I hate like doing compare and contrast because it feels like I'm putting down Near Dark.
There's a reason why you have to like make decisions. So
yeah, and so like, but I love when music is used well in film, and American Werewolf in London might have some of my favorite like needle drop soundtrack uses.
Yeah.
And like the ending of this movie is maybe one of my favorite endings of all time. And then when it comes to Blue Moon at the end, it's so good. So other things, Jenny Agutter in this movie is very important to me. She is. You can see how any red-blooded American male would head over to London and immediately fall head over heels in love with Jenny Agutter. And how can you not?
I did.
I mentioned the ending, but the other thing I want to mention too is I think the transformation scene in werewolf movies is the most important part of a werewolf movie.
Yeah.
It's almost like the Incredible Hulk. I think it's key. You don't want to see the person turn into a werewolf, but when he does, you really want to see it happen. And I think the combination of Rick Baker's special effects, the way Landis shoots it, like the way he does the multiple angles, and then David Naughton's performance and like the anguish on his it's so good. I believe
that he's in like incredible pain.
Yes, I think it's the most underrated part of that sequence for me is his performance. Is his performance and how good he is. And I do think there's something romantic about like young Americans. Like there's like it's romanticized, but young Americans kind of backpacking across Europe. It's something I've never experienced it, but like I love the idea of it, and I love seeing how it can go wrong. So what's weird is I saw American Werewolf in Paris before this, but American Werewolf in London is the better of the two. So that's my number 9.
Excellent. My number 8 from 1987, I have The Monster Squad. The Monster Squad for me is like... So this is one of those VHS tapes that was recorded off of some sort of cable channel by my dad. And it didn't do well in theaters, the movie, and like it just like kind of died, and then it had this cult following because of its reruns on cable. And I'm assuming VHS probably, but like my video store did not have this movie.
The Monster Squad, yeah.
So mine was like recorded off TV, and it just like I did not have a ton of experience with the Universal monsters as a kid. Like, the oldest kind of monster movies I really was exposed to were like the Godzillas, the early Showa era Godzilla stuff. So that vintage horror film, like, I mean, I knew who Dracula was and like the Mummy and stuff, but like I didn't really have a ton of actual experience watching those films. And so Monster Squad for me was like the first like real foray into an on-screen Frankenstein and Dracula and all those. And it's funny. It holds up actually. There's a wee bit of language in it.
Yeah, there's
a couple like dated, like kind of gnarly, like nasty references, but for the most part, it holds up pretty good. And
outside of those, there's an edge to it too. In kids' movies,
it's a dangerous kids' movie.
Yes,
and I can see why it bombed because who is this made for? This came out in '87, and it was at a time when like the slasher craze was starting to die down a little bit. And parents had really taken it to horror, parent groups and stuff like that at this point. You saw like parent groups kind of banning trying to ban like Silent Night, Deadly Night, and like getting very even critics like Siskel and Ebert like getting vitriolic about like the Friday the 13th franchise and things like that. And so horror was kind of like headed towards what would become its downslope in that early 90s run. And here you have this movie that's kind of silly and fun and zany and has a cast that's mostly comprised of children, but also is a monster movie. Of course it was going to bomb. But God, like, what a movie. Like, it's just, it's a special movie. It will always have a special place in my heart, and I saw it at the perfect time.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those movies where, like, if you don't see it at the right age, I don't know that it will really click with you. I could be wrong.
Would you say this is one of the? Would you put this like top of gateway horror?
It's the best.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't. This is the gateway horror movie.
Okay.
I wish there were one or two moments where there's some language that I wish.
Yeah.
I wish like. I almost wish it was not present.
Right.
But so I could feel more comfortable saying like have your kid watch Monster Squad. But like,
right.
When my last word on it will be Josie met Barbara Crampton.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what a delight she was. And the first movie she said Josie should watch was Monster Squad. Barbara gets it. She gets it.
Yep, and you can't argue with Barbara Crampton.
I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. So anyway,
I wouldn't either.
Number 8 for me is the Monster Squad. Yep.
Perfect. All right, my number 8 is shockingly low. If you know me, Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. So here's the thing with Halloween 3.
Kind of low, yeah.
I almost think it's gone from an underrated movie to being a little bit overrated at this point. I actually think it's gone too far to the other side. So I remember, the thing with Halloween 3 for you youngsters out there is back when I was young, this was easily, the black sheep of the franchise. Like people did talk about it. When it came out, like people were like, "What is this? There's no Michael Myers."
People held 5 in higher regard
yes.
than 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the original plan for the Halloween franchise, or one of the original plans for the Halloween franchise, was to be an anthology series where all these stories took place around Halloween, but then 2 happened in between because Michael Myers was so popular, blah, blah, blah. But they went with this idea for 3. And this is one of the movies, and it's part of the reason I hold it so dear. I watch it every Halloween. This is the one tradition that I find time for. As I've gotten older, it's gotten tougher, but this is one that I will not let go. I will watch this every Halloween.
This and Bride of Frankenstein, right?
I'll throw a lot of the Universal monster movies on in the background a lot of the times now, but even that, like even Bride, I'm not as strict on. Halloween 3 has to. I used to watch Evil Dead 2 on my birthday. It's been a while. Evil Dead 2 is a tough one to fit in. So, and my birthday's a weird one. But Halloween 3 on Halloween night, I will watch it.
Nice.
But this is one of the first movies that I watched, and I remember because the word of mouth back in my day was toxic on this movie back then.
Bad.
It was bad. People did not like this movie. In fact, a lot of people hated this movie.
It's terrible. It's horrible.
And that has swung the other way now, I think, a little bit. But I remember watching it. It was from the first times where I went, you know what, I kind of like this. Everybody hates this. I kind of like this. And it's one of those first movies where I kind of remember I don't want to say thinking for myself about a horror movie or a movie.
Yeah, being critical in your own right. Yeah,
but having a different going you know what, my tastes align with what this movie is doing. I like what this movie is doing. It is weird. It is nasty. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense. But the score is phenomenal.
Yeah, and Tom Atkins is great.
Tom Atkins is a sex machine in this movie,
as he should be.
There's a Tom Atkins sex scene in this movie.
It's so sensual. You and I have both met Tom.
We have both met Tom. I have a signed Halloween 3 poster from Tom.
Yes, I have a picture with him at the Mall of America.
Yep, a fabulous gentleman.
He's great.
He's very nice.
If you get a chance, it's worth it.
But I remember just thinking. I remember watching this and going you know what? It's okay that I like this movie. Yeah. And apparently there are a lot more people out there like me than I expected.
We just need to reveal ourselves to the world.
Yeah, but also you have it in it. But I do like it too, and it also is it kind of helped me realize like you can appreciate different things about a franchise that you love.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be just one thing. It can be all of these. Like Halloween is a perfect example because there are like 9 different continuities. So like
Yes.
it can be all of these
Especially
things.
now, yeah.
And you can like or dislike stuff on its own merits, and it's okay. And you can accept other people's opinions of this as well. So that's my long-winded Halloween 3 reasoning at number 8.
I should say Halloween 3 is on my honorable mentions. It was so close.
Yeah.
And I just... I think I finally appreciated it a little bit later than because even when I first watched it on VHS, I rejected it. I was like,
Yep. Yeah.
no, it's terrible.
I almost appreciate the people that are still rejecting it.
Yeah, it's kind of great. Yeah, like still sucks. No, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
All right,
Number 7
for me is Friday the 13th. Was bound to wind up on this list.
Mm-hmm.
The final chapter.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I feel like I did that. I was like, lead them on. How long can I? Look, so there are, 8 Friday the 13th movies that took place or were created, were made during the 80s. I think 88 was the last one.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, my God. So I had a lot to choose from. It's my favorite horror franchise. It's probably my favorite film franchise of all time. So that's the whole thing holds a special place in my heart. So like, I have 2 favorites in the franchise, and it's 4 and it's 6. And 6 made the honorable mentions cut. And the reason why I say that is, I think I mentioned with 4 before. 4 is everything I want a Friday the 13th movie to be. It takes everything the first 3 movies did and the ripoffs of Friday the 13th did and expands on them. It perfects everything that came before it. It is the quintessential slasher film, especially the quintessential summer camp slasher film. So part 4 for me is always like that high mark where I think the performances are actually really fun and strong, even from like the side characters who are usually pretty forgettable in these movies, or like one note. I think for the most part, the side characters and like the teenagers and stuff like in this movie that you actually, I think you grow to care about them. I think there's a few of them where like you're not necessarily like you're not like heartbroken that they die in the movie because you know what's coming. Like you're not. I mean, but like you're kind of like, oh man, that sucks. Like that's a bummer. Like.
Oh, when I watched it this past weekend, I'm like,
damn, like that poor girl just fell in love with this guy and now she's killed instantly afterwards. Like there's moments.
Even my man, is it Ned? Is it Ted? It's Ted.
Yes.
My man Ted was just a big goofball.
Yeah, he was just
Like,
having a good time.
He's just having a good time
Wasn't
watching
harming anybody.
old stag flicks or whatever you call
and
them.
then he gets murdered. Like that sucks. Like he's just trying to like get high and watch some goofy nudie flicks from. Yeah, I mean, so it does a really great job of being a really great classic slasher film, and having effects from Savini is certainly a huge boon for this movie, and the Crispin Glover dance. I mean, it's a series of great dances, but the whole series has a nice scope of
My wife
dances.
was down this past weekend.
Did she catch it?
Yes, she watched the whole thing with me.
She's seen it.
She had seen it before, but she had forgotten about it, and I'm like, "Here it comes!" And she goes, "Oh, is this?" And then she was just like, "What is he doing?"
Have you watched it with the actual song they were playing on set?
No,
You should try it. It actually like weirdly.
What song is it?
Back in Black.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Turns out Crispin's actually a better dancer than we thought.
It's still
insane.
It's still a Crispin Glover only choice.
Absolutely. Only he could bring that to life.
Anyway, the other thing she said is like, she's kind of right. It's like young Crispin Glover is kind of like a good-looking dude.
Yeah,
he's like a good.
Yeah, I believe he could be like insecure and nerdy like this character is,
right?
But also wind up, getting laid. I mean, so like once again, like I'm saying, the characters actually kind of feel like genuine and feel like they could exist in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 movies, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah,
2 and 3 especially, it gets very cartoony about. There's like the Tommy Chong guy.
Yeah.
there's a lot of like even like
Three's
Shelley
the
feels
Three's the biker gang. Is Three the
yeah,
biker?
it's silly.
Yeah.
This one actually feels like, oh, these people could be real humans. And everybody laughs at the whole "he's killing me" scene. That I think it's freaky as hell.
Yeah.
Like, that's spooky to me. I don't know. People laugh at that, but I'm like, no, that's scary as shit.
Yeah.
Imagine being upstairs and this guy's screaming, he's killing. Anyway, part 4, my favorite Friday the 13th. It's number 7 on my 80s list. And, yeah, I'm sticking with it.
I've loved so far our list because we haven't
Completely different.
Completely different. This is where we're similar. I have a Friday the 13th movie as well at number 7.
Part 6, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I knew it. Yeah. This is my, God, it's hard.
But here's the thing. So the 4 and 6 are probably 2, maybe 3 movies that I would actually defend as good movies.
Yes.
From the franchise. And I love this franchise. It's my favorite franchise, but I'm not going to sit here and defend.
No.
Part 7 is like being a good movie.
It's sweet, but
Yeah,
it's not a good movie.
No, it's not a good movie. But like the other one I would throw in is the remake. I think the remake's a good movie.
I think it's a legitimately good movie.
I think it's a good movie. I almost think
people don't appreciate that
I
movie.
almost think it's too good. Like I think it's
Kind
too
of,
slick
right?
and glossy.
Yeah.
But this one and part 4 are good movies.
Yep.
There's another theme that is developing in my list as I've had like Society and American Werewolf in London and a couple movies later, and that's the horror comedy. And I think this is a great decade for horror comedies. And I think this is a very good horror comedy. I think there are moments of both horror and comedy that work really well.
Yeah.
This I laugh, like legitimately laugh at some of the fourth wall breaking in this movie. I legitimately laugh at some of the lines in this movie, some of the puns. The what did you want to be when you grow up? Is
Yes, it's amazing.
It's such a good line, and Tom McLaughlin is a good director.
He's a great. It's a beautiful film, and I feel like oftentimes, and I get it, like it makes sense. Like Craven gets a lot of the credit for the, and Williamson get a lot of the credit for the meta,
Right.
what Scream, which I think,
And then everybody points to before Scream, they
Nightmare.
point to New Nightmare.
which was true. I mean, it was a huge, but like this is like way before that, and this to me, this is the birth of that meta.
This is Jason doing a James Bond entrance.
It's insane.
It's so good.
There are 2 movies to me, and what's funny is they both this came out in 86.
This is 86, yeah.
The 2 movies that feel like the first meta horror movies, the prototypes for what would come later, are this and another movie from 86.
Is that
It's on my honorable mentions.
Okay.
Night of the Creeps.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway. But there's also moments of like actual suspense in this movie, and that's not something I think you get in the majority of Friday the 13th movies. I'm thinking specifically of the scene where he's walking through the cabin with the kids hiding. Like that's moments where I think like that's one of the few moments in this entire series where I go like, oh shit, like these kids are in danger, and like I'm feeling like suspense in whether or not Jason is actually going to do this.
I've never seen Jason around children, essentially.
Right.
Beyond Corey Feldman, I guess. But yeah.
But like, and so like, there are moments, and it's a credit to the director that like Tom McLaughlin, like there are moments that like by the 6th movie for that to be happening is pretty impressive. Like, so good for him. So on a more personal level, the first Jason movie I actually saw was Part 8. And I remember,
Yes.
Shout out to my boys, Chris and Corey. I would go over there, and one summer, we'd hang out every couple weeks, and we'd watch horror movies. And this one I was really young. And Part 8 was on a double bill with, I believe, Army of Darkness. And then, like,
wow.
2 weeks later, I remember all of us going, like, we went up to the video store, like, and we're like, oh shit, like Part 6 and 7 are like they're in, like we can rent them, they're here.
Do you remember those days? Like it's in,
and that was probably why we.
God,
and I don't
those.
remember, but like that is probably why we rented Part 8 first, because we're like we wanted to watch this.
I miss that.
But like,
It's in.
That's something I think has been lost.
It has.
Is like you can just watch a
Everything's
random.
readily available now. It's like
And everybody watches everything in
it's a good thing,
sequence, but everything watches everything in sequence, and like I do miss like the days where like you had to watch Part 8 first if you wanted to.
So sweet.
So anyway,
God, man, I just like a wave of nostalgia, just like
yeah. So anyway, like we watched part 6 and part 7 back to back. That was our doubleheader. The net like 2 weeks later, and I remember loving those two. And like I loved part 7 too. I loved Jason versus Carrie. I remember thinking it was sweet.
yeah.
But this is also the beginning of this is also kind of the beginning of Zombie Jason, which is my is my preferred Jason.
You like the zombie, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, this is in that group with 6, 7, and 8 that made me fall in love with the franchise. So it holds a special.
Nice.
Much like Jason Takes Manhattan holds a special place in my heart because it's the first one I saw. Like this is kind of in that group of like this is
trio of.
And for me, this is Jason because it's the first one I saw. So, or it was one of the first ones I saw. So, anyway, that's my number 7. Jason
I'm
Lives.
4, 5, and 6. That's my trio.
I wanted to put 5 on here. It was just 5 is me.
I love 5.
Yeah, 5 is our movie.
5 is a different thing.
Yeah,
it's
yes.
a whole. My number 6 is Prince of Darkness from 1987. Look, like John Carpenter's. He's John Carpenter. I don't know what to say. Like, I mean, I could sit here and go on and on about the guy, but like he'd probably be annoyed with me, so I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is that he's made more kind of. I would argue John Carpenter's made more indelible films and more films that have affected pop culture than like 90% of directors out there.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair argument. Like, you think about his filmography, Halloween, The Thing, They Live, Escape from New York. I mean, just like one after another. Prince of Darkness got kind of swallowed up in that post Big Trouble in Little China studio issues he had with that, like where he was like going back to lower budget genre fare. And I think I saw Prince of Darkness on cable, not even knowing it was a John Carpenter movie. Like I bumped into the movie, I guess. I knew who John Carpenter was at that point. I had seen John Carpenter was one of the first directors where I understood what a director was.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like I understood like there are people that make movies for a living, like that's their job. And they have a style, and I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, okay." So I was like, "Oh, he did the Halloween, and he did The Thing, and he did The Fog." And I think I like this guy because I like all three of those movies. And I saw Prince of Darkness. I think I caught it like 20 minutes in, and I was like, "This is the scariest shit I've ever seen in my entire." Like I was terrified. I had nightmares that night about it. Like, freaked me out. And the credits are rolling, and I saw John Carpenter. And I went, "What? Like this guy did it again? Oh my god!" Like it just blew my mind. So,
I love this guy did it again. I love that.
Right? Like, oh my god, he made this too? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just like it blew my mind. And then I learned about Big Trouble in Little China. And like I was like, he's the master. He's like the best. Yeah. Anyway, but I watched it years later on DVD. And the DVD had a cover. The cover, I ordered it on FamilyVideo.com. So I worked for that company at that point. And I got discounts, right? And the cover was just Alice Cooper's face, which is hilarious.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that
I still
cover.
have it, I think. It's the dumbest DVD ever. But I rewatched it it played on cable for a little while, I think, after theatrical, and then it kind of disappeared. And I rewatched it when. Oh my god, this is like one of his best movies. And I still stand by it. I think it's one of his best films. It's scary. The score is insane. It's a siege film, which I love, and there's nobody better at doing a siege film than Carpenter. The performances are really strong. The ideas are heady enough to where they're not obnoxious, but they're also actually kind of thought-provoking and interesting. Some would say they're half-baked, and that's fine. I don't disagree. But sometimes half-baked is part of the fun and part of the mystery.
Yeah.
I think he sells it in a way where it's like, where the unknown is the scariest part about it. It's a really, really cool, unique, effective movie that only that guy could make. And I love it. I love Prince of Darkness. It's one of his best movies. I think it's one of the best horror movies of all time, in my opinion. So, yeah. Prince of Darkness is my number 6.
My number 6 is a zombie movie, The Return of the Living Dead.
All right.
This is not my favorite zombie movie of the 80s, But that is because my favorite zombie movie ever is coming up.
Fair enough.
There is an irreverence to Return of the Living Dead that I find so inspiring.
It's another meta movie.
It is, and it's also like a punk rock movie that is making fun of punk rock, which is the most punk rock thing you could do.
Yeah, right? It's kind of shitting on punk rocker.
Yes.
Fans. Yeah.
Like it is just a movie that is like, it's a movie that's a fuck you to the 80s as a decade. It's a movie that's a fuck you to
all the horror films that came before it.
It's a movie that's a fuck you to death. It's a movie that has a woman dancing naked on a grave.
That was an awakening, by the way.
Linnea Quigley dancing. Yes,
My goodness.
Absolutely.
I met Linnea.
Did you?
Yes. She
I
asked
didn't
me
know
where
that.
the bathroom was.
Where at?
It was a hotel
Okay.
at a convention. I said, "It's right. Go." And I was like, that was her, right?
Yeah.
I feel really weird right now.
Well, I'm sure she's gotten weirder.
Yeah, no, I was totally like, yeah, I gotta go around the. But internally, I was like, oh my god, I just talked to Linnea Quigley. Yeah, it woke me up inside.
It's one of those movies too that is it was born out of the fact that Romero and
Russo
wanted to go different directions. Yeah. And I'm happy they did, and I'm happy they both exist.
Yes,
because they are two different movies, and this has similarities today. I think too. It's just different.
So there, there's a nihilism to both,
right?
The difference being the nihilism is focused in a different direction, right? So yeah, we'll get into it, but
I think too. There's a I'm trying to do this without spoiling my later thoughts.
Right?
There's a nihilistic return, as I mentioned, is a little bit more. I don't want to say it's fun. Yeah, it is funny in the way it's presented.
Funny.
It's funny. It's a funny movie.
It's kind of shitting on society as a whole.
Yeah,
like it's shitting on
there's almost like a South Park aspect to it, where it's just like.
So I'll just say, Return is my number 5.
Okay.
Let's get it out now.
Okay.
Back. So Return is 5.
Okay.
Let's get our thoughts out now.
Yeah, let's do it together. Okay.
So South Park is a perfect example because it's kind of shitting on a wide range of subjects and things, but it's funny while it's doing it. It doesn't feel nasty. It doesn't feel dark. It feels kind of tongue in cheek. Like, we all know this is bullshit.
Yeah.
But let's just laugh about it because laugh to keep from crying.
Right.
The other movie we're going to discuss is no cry.
Cry. There's like a wisdom today that I don't think Return of the Living Dead has any fucking interest in.
There's an acceptance to return.
Yes.
Where it's like, this fucking, hey, we're all going to die.
Like, party anyway.
Have a good time. Because it's going to happen. The bomb is literally going to drop.
The soundtrack of Return is, I have party, yeah. Like, it is running through my head the entire time
amazing.
I'm doing this, and I love it.
Yeah.
And it's got our boy Tom Matthews in it.
Dude, hell yeah. Tommy Jarvis, man.
And it has, I think, this is a great year for individual zombies too.
Yeah.
Or a great decade for individuals.
Tarman.
Because Tarman and then Days Zombie are two of the great, if not the greatest zombies of all time. So your number 5 is Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That's easy.
Anything else?
No, I mean, it's a perfect film in that it does exactly what it's trying to accomplish in the best way possible. Like, I love Return. So that's my number 5.
Yeah.
Now we're on to you.
Yes. My number 5 is Hellraiser. I love Clive Barker. He is a gentleman. I think it's fair to call him a gentleman. He is
a distinguished gentleman.
A distinguished gentleman. I wish, and there are many reasons for it, including just general bullshit of Hollywood and art in general. I wish you were
politics and stuff like that. Yeah,
I wish he were more prolific in his writing, in his filmmaking. His writing is a little bit tougher because, like, some of his later books are just so. Actually, a lot of his books are just so like big and unwieldy. Like, I understand why he only writes. He's only written so much.
Sure.
But I love Hellraiser, and Hellraiser is I think it's a perfect example of the type of movie I love, which is you have this guy in Clive Barker who has this imagination that is just out there. It's huge, it's expansive, and it's crazy.
So unique.
Yes. Yeah. Clive Barker has a very specific style and voice, but he's able to, in this movie especially, and I think it's the best example of his work, he's able to kind of narrow that down into something that is a little bit more mainstream. It somehow stays. It somehow is a little bit. I think Candyman is another example of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's. I think it's hard for creators for original creator, I'm not saying like directors adapting something, right? So
Yeah.
he directed this film.
Yes.
It's very hard for them to, I think, take an original work, especially somebody with so strong and unique a voice as Clive has, and create something that is palatable for mostly palatable.
But this was a mainstream.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was a mainstream horror film.
Yes.
As mainstream as horror can get, this is it.
Yeah.
So that I think that it's so rare that can happen, because
Mm-hmm.
I think oftentimes, like, when you see an adapted work in horror become mainstream, I feel like oftentimes you hear the original creator saying, "Oh, they changed my this," or did they, like. I think that's fairly common.
And the other thing too is like he was a writer, and then this is his first time directing, and I think it's kind of incredible how good of a director he is.
Really good.
And I think some of that comes from he's an artist too. But also, like, you even watch this today, and it is transgressive in a way. Like, it's like it is kind of you're taken aback by a lot of the sex and violence in this movie.
Yeah.
And it has one of my Frank is one of my greatest. He's one of the we've discussed Frank before. He is a man that is too horny to be on this plane of existence.
He literally has hornied himself out of this part of the multiverse. Or whatever.
He has to go find somewhere else, some other reality that will accept him for being
to do it.
And so he can have something beyond these earthly pleasures.
So sweet. Like, good for him.
He's one of the all-time great characters, but like it is good. And I'm joking, but I truly mean it.
It's kind of cool. Like, it's insane. Like, it's awesome.
But also,
that's
like,
the motivation.
The other thing is, like, I also love going back to watch this movie because it's kind of like Beetlejuice in a way, where I think, like, you forget Beetlejuice is only in that Beetlejuice movie for like 20 minutes.
Right?
He's barely in the first Beetlejuice movie.
I've heard some complaints about the new one that he's like barely in it. I'm like,
he's not in the first one.
He's not.
But this movie, Hellraiser, is similar to Beetlejuice in that Pinhead and his fellow Cenobites
they're in it for like 5 minutes.
They're barely in this
insane.
movie. What you're drawn to is the family dynamic and like the family drama, and it's the same thing with Beetlejuice. Weirdly enough,
yes,
you're drawn to the characters that are the family.
You're right.
And it centers around a daughter. Weirdly enough, maybe Tim Burton ripped off Hellraiser.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
So anyway, I do think that's weird, and going back and look at it, but it is a movie that I think is still kind of shocking in a lot of ways, and it still holds up. So Hellraiser is my number 5, and if you have not dived into Clive Barker, do yourself a favor and really dive into Clive Barker.
Enjoy. Awesome. My number 4, because we shared a 5 and 6, so we kind of about that. My number 4 is The Lost Boys. Man, I just like The Lost Boys is like perfect. When I think of the 80s as a decade, I think of The Lost Boys. The fashion, the music, the sexiness, the art direction of 80s films, the look of 80s films, the slickness, the actors of the 80s. The Lost Boys is kind of that decade for me in one package. And because I'm a fan of the 80s, I mean, I lived through 4 years of them. I was 1 through 4 in those years. So I can't say here and say I'm a 90s kid. I'm not an 80s kid. But I have a certain, I gravitate towards music from the 80s. I gravitate towards films from the 80s. Why that is, I don't know. I think it's probably because I have, it doesn't feel retro to me because I was old enough to like have lived some of it, even if my memory is foggy on most of those years. But it's not it exists in my universe, in my life, right? But it still feels kind of cool and retro to me.
Right.
I'm in that strange elder millennial
Yeah.
age range, right?
You and I both.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right there too.
Yes.
Exactly. So when I think of the Lost Boys, I think of the '80s, and I think about everything I love about that decade, and the filmmaking from that decade, and the genre filmmaking from that decade. And I think about Joel Schumacher, who recently passed not too long ago. And I think about the shit that Joel Schumacher wound up getting because of, understandably, the bad Batman movie he made.
Yeah.
I still think Forever is actually kind of fun. I'll stand by that one. Batman and Robin's a terrible movie.
I'm with you. I like.
Forever's fun.
Forever's like up until I think the last movie is the first time we got to see Batman being like an actual detective.
Yeah, I think Forever's arguably better than Returns.
Yeah.
I love Returns. I think it's insane. I think it's certainly, whatever. I think Schumacher gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
For basically one movie in his career. And he was a guy who always had his finger on the pulse of what was like hot and cool. And The Lost Boys is like a 90-minute music video.
Yeah.
And that's not a diss.
No.
It's not. Because if you look at the great music videos, most of them came out of the 80s and through the mid-90s, I would say.
Some great directors Fincher has got to start. Was it Michael Mann get started with music videos?
I mean, like a lot of them. And this is like the ultimate like I said, like 90-minute or whatever music video. It's just it's style and substance like married into the perfect blend of the two. Because I think there's a lot to chew on in this movie too, but it's mostly just this really, really great blast, just absolute blast of 90 minutes that you get sucked into and you have a great time with. Like you just have fun watching this movie. And it's not just one of my favorite horror films of all time or my horror films of the 80s of all time. It's in my top 10 movies of all time.
Yeah.
And the next 3 after this also are in my top 10 of all time.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Lost Boys, it's I don't know. I have a hard time talking about Lost Boys because it's so like I think it's just so great. But yeah. Kiefer. I mean, you know, the Coreys before they went on tour with Limp Bizkit. Well, one of them. Have you seen some of that stuff, by the way?
I one of the people who Joe sent me a video live from the concert.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Go for it. Hey, you know what? Dude, go for it.
Good for him. Yeah.
Hey. All right. So yeah, number 4 for me is The Lost Boys. What's your 4?
My 4 is The Thing.
Nice.
So in a lot of ways, every time I think we've done the Carpenter bracket and we've talked about Carpenter, and I always go, it depends on the day. What my favorite Carpenter movie is. What's funny is I don't have this. My 4 and 3
Interesting.
are tied together. I'll say that about. But so here's the thing with The Thing.
The Thing with The Thing.
I think in a lot of ways is his best made movie. So I've talked about this before. I took a John Carpenter film class.
Yes.
And I remember watching a lot of the movies, a lot of his earlier stuff, and his later stuff. People would kind of giggle at certain parts of it because it was.
I saw The Thing in the theater. And it was the same way, and I went, "Why are we laughing?"
Now, weirdly enough, though, like people did not giggle during The Thing.
Well, I had that during my screening.
Weird. So mine, they didn't. Like they would giggle during parts of Halloween, like parts they shouldn't have been, or like parts of what am I blanking on here?
Fog.
Like, They Live, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Parts of The Fog. But like The Thing, like they sat there. In a lot of ways, like it is, I think, his best made movie. And maybe some of that is because he's pretty much focused on directing.
Sure.
In this movie, and the effects as well are. I think they're the best effects in all of his movies. I would say. I'm trying to think of anything I might put up there even closer.
There's some cool stuff in The Mouth of Madness.
That's kind of the one I was thinking of.
But that's
I
more
think
of a
lot of
advancement and sophistication in terms of what you could do.
There's a lot of fun stuff in Big Trouble, but it is kind of goofy at times. There's
Fantasy.
nothing goofy about The Thing.
No.
When I think of The Thing, like there are like 4 or 5 like iconic scenes in this movie, but the one that always gets me is the it's not the blood scene, which is great. It's not the dog scene.
Yeah.
It's the defibrillator scene.
Oh my god, yeah.
I think like that's one of those shocking
opening,
scenes that like sticks with me forever.
It's insane.
It's so cool looking, and so like there are 4 or 5 like different scenes that like have stuck with me forever from this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie about men that critiques men, but it's also a movie about humanity. It's a movie that is always going to be relevant for the fact that it is about humanity. Like we saw. Everybody, there's that meme that always goes around. It's a meme based off of this movie, which is like everybody's tired. We're all tired.
Trusts anybody.
Nobody trusts anybody. That's humanity, like at its worst.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true.
So that is true. It got passed around a lot during COVID, but like it's not just COVID, like it was back then. But it's also
right now.
It's a movie, absolutely, and it's a movie about the decade. It is. I mean, even before a lot of the AIDS epidemic, even before the AIDS epidemic kind of became bigger in the public mind, like this.
Well, we've talked about Prince Darkness, which I think when we discussed that, we talked about how that feels like much more of a, maybe not intentional, but it feels very AIDS.
It's born of that time.
Yes.
The Thing also has a lot of that stuff going on in it too.
Yes, it does.
And I do think that plays into the theme of distrust among and worry among them. So that is what I'll say about The Thing. I don't know. It's tough to rate Carpenter because it depends on my mood.
I know.
But I do have one more Carpenter movie coming up. So what's your number 3?
Aliens. So this is where I was. This is like the god damn. Like, do I? Is Aliens a horror film, right? And I guess I'll spend my time on Aliens arguing for why it's a horror film before it's an action film. Yeah, there's lots of guns, right? There's no question that it certainly has more action than Alien, Ridley Scott's film. But here's what I'll say. A good sequel should up the ante. I think all sequels that are successful do up the ante from the original. You look at Empire Strikes Back. You look at Terminator 2. I think all classic, like those sequels that are held in a high regard, take the what the original did and expand on it and kind of make it bigger. Aliens does that. I think you up in horror films you have to up the body count. Well, this movie does that, no question. But despite the fact that this movie gets bigger and zanier, and there's lots of guns firing and stuff, I think people forget about Aliens and why people kind of like make it an action sci-fi horror film is because they're comparing it to Alien, which is very much a sci-fi like emphasis on horror, right? And then sci-fi secondary. But Aliens, the element that people do forget about, I think, is that like within seconds of this tough as nails commando unit showing up and thinking that they're like the biggest, toughest, nastiest cock of the walk, like they can take on anything. They get like there's like 7 left by the end of their first like introduction to the aliens. Mm-hmm. That's it. From then on, it's a horror film. Like it's a survival. Like they are pinned down and outnumbered and outgunned despite the guns, and like it becomes like a fight for survival. That's horror. That to me, that's horror.
Yeah.
To me, it's almost scarier than the first movie in some ways, because they spend like 45 minutes building up this team as like they can handle this, and then they get their asses kicked like horribly. So for me, that's almost more horrific. When your most capable character is essentially like the 6-year-old or 8-year-old girl, like she's the one who can handle her shit the best. Like that's scary. That's scary as hell. Like, I love that, and it's got the ticking clock, which is of course like a huge part of like that tension builder. I have some bias to it because it's got my favorite performance ever. Period. History of movies ever. It's Paxton as Hudson. That's it. That's like he's my favorite character ever. I love that character so much. I can't even begin to. I could do a whole episode on just that character because I think he's the best. Stan Winston with the effects. I mean, just like God. I mean, it doesn't. There's never been a better sequel, in my opinion, than Aliens. It's as good as it gets, and I think it's still has its feet firmly placed in the horror genre enough to qualify on this list, and I think it's deserving of being called a horror film, as much as Terminator 1 is worthy of that. So yeah,
I don't want to argue with that.
It's Aliens. Yep.
All right, so we're now number 3, right?
Yes. Give me number 3.
My number 3 is Prince of Darkness.
Hell yeah, let's fucking go, Tim.
So John Carpenter has like like I mentioned, he's like multiple masterpieces. This one though, we talked about quintessential Friday the 13th movies. Mm-hmm. This to me is like the all-encompassing John Carpenter.
It's all of it.
Yep.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
So
I'm so happy that I'm so proud of you right now. I gotta gush about you.
And I guess that is like the reason I rank it just a little bit above The Thing, because The Thing has a lot of that stuff, but this is. You mentioned a siege movie. It's a Western.
Yep.
It's a team of professionals. It has a John Carpenter score.
It's got the silly pseudoscience.
It's got
mixed
a silly
with like horror. Yeah.
It's his Nigel Neal, his Quatermass. It's probably the more successful of his because Halloween 3 is the other one, but this is
he worked with him on.
Yes, he worked with him on that. This one is the more successful, like inspired by Nigel Neal movies, but. I used this before. Way back when we talked about this a long time ago, but I'm gonna use it again because I like the comparison. So Prince, there's an album from 1987, I think the same year, 87, 88 maybe, called "Sign of the Times." And "Sign of the Times" is not Prince's most popular album.
It's got some bangers on it.
Yes, and it's also like, if you talk to Prince fans, they will go and they will say like that is his masterpiece. Like that is the all-encompassing Prince album.
If you want the definitive Prince experience, it's that
it's
album.
A double album.
Even if there's better songs on other ones, that's his.
There's even a little bit of like his embarrassing rapping that came later.
Right.
But it's all of his different sound. It has references, and it encompasses the 80s as well, and it has references, funnily enough, to AIDS, like the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
And Prince of Darkness is in that way like the 80s movie when it comes to the AIDS epidemic for me,
sure.
The 80s horror movie. So it also has all of its trademarks. And so the other thing too is there is a moment that like will forever be in my brain. There's a shot of the California night sky and it's lit up. And it feels very California. And for whatever reason, I was out in San Francisco at the WrestleMania there.
Oh, yeah.
And out in San Francisco, and the night sky was like, the way it looked and the fluorescent lights and stuff, I was like, in my mind, I went, holy shit.
It's Prince of Darkness.
It's Prince of Darkness right now.
Yeah.
I don't, for whatever reason, like that split second of this movie has stuck with me forever.
That's awesome.
Just the shot of the sky, and so that's a powerful movie for me. And yeah, the idea of too like the anti-god is so scary to me. Like the fact like that we're not living like that maybe there is an order to the universe, but it's not what we expect.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so I'm not an overly religious person.
Yeah,
but that's a terrifying thought, right? That if there's a higher power that's in our like trying to help us out, there's also something that's
and maybe that's the universe we're living in. Like maybe
that's the one that has more control over what we're doing. Yes, sure.
So that is Prince of Darkness, my number 3. What's your number 2, Willie?
Yeah, this one and number 1 kind of waffled back and forth. It's hard. And I'm sitting here debating like what am I going to say as my number 2 right now. Like it's hard for me to, but I'm going to stick with what I had, and I feel confident in this. It's Day of the Dead.
We both have the same number 2, so let's talk about it if you're okay with that.
Yeah, let's double up. I love Night of the Living Dead. I think it's a great movie. It's a formative film for me. It's the first Romero film I saw. I think the first Romero film most people saw. He really hadn't done any features before that, so it was kind of like the earliest example of what he could do, and the earliest example of the what we consider the zombie now, like the modern zombie. That was it. Like, it was invented in '68, which is insane to me. Like, yeah, of course, '68 now is a long time ago, but like, it's really not that long ago. Like, when you think of like the invention of vampires and werewolves, like that was like hundreds of years ago.
Right.
Zombies are not that far back, really, in the grand scheme of things.
No.
And then I saw Dawn next, and Dawn is just, I mean, it's when somebody asks me should I watch first, Romero wise, to like get into Romero, it's Dawn. Even though for me Day is my favorite of his films. Dawn is what I go to first, purely because I think Dawn is this kind of it's kind of the perfect zombie film. It kind of captures everything that you can do with that genre in one package. And then I saw Day on VHS. I think I've said this before on the show, but like one of my weirdest, like biggest regrets in life. I don't like regrets in life, but one of my biggest regrets in life was not being able to buy the VHS copy that I rented, dozens of times from my local video store before somebody else bought it when they were going out of business.
Right.
That will forever haunt me. Like, I want that tape, but I remember popping this thing in. Like, I loved Night. I fell in love with Dawn, discovering that on a Christmas morning, not knowing there was a sequel to Night, and going, oh my God, discovering directors, right? Romero.
Yes.
Going, oh my God, he made more? What? By the time I saw Dawn, I had heard there was a third. So I was seeking it out, and I found it at the video store. And I popped that thing in. And Dawn's kind of like an interesting, like a celebration almost, right? Like, it's kind of fun and comic booky and like an adventure film. We mentioned that. And pop in Day. And from the second Day opens to the moment the closing credits start to roll, it is it's dark.
Yeah.
I mean, really dark. Like,
it is nasty too. Like,
it is angry.
Yep.
It is frustrated. It is tired of everything. It's a director who has had a lot to say in his films, who finally is going, this is all fallen on deaf ears.
Mm-hmm.
So you did it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That like this is him finally saying, okay, I guess this is how it's going to be. So I'll make the movie that's going to show you what, like, this is what's going to happen to you guys if this is it. I'm not trying to like warn you anymore. This is the future. And it's become better because of that. Like, Dawn continued to be my favorite for years, even after I saw Day for the first time. Day was that first view. Like, if I could go back and watch one movie for the first time again, it'd be Day. That opening sequence, I've never been more rattled by. I don't think anything in a movie than that opening sequence, in terms of fear and in terms of like feeling uncomfortable. That opening sequence when he starts talking to the microphone, like, you start to realize like there's nobody left.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's gone. And it's the subtle bits of dialogue. It's handled so. It's handled in such a way where it's not like, oh, we're the only ones left. It's handled in a way where it's like everybody knows that.
Yeah.
They all internally they know that this is as good as, like, this is how bad it's gotten. They know that, but nobody's willing to come out and just say it. That's scary to me. Like, when something's going on internally and you're recognizing how bad something is, and you're not actually going to. You cannot formulate enough courage to say it out loud to somebody.
Right.
And it's that opening sequence where he goes like, they're in the helicopter and he goes like, you can hear it over the engines, like the sound of how many dead are out. Like it's that will stick with me for the rest of my life. It's terrifying.
You touched on this too, and
sorry.
No, you touched on this too, but I wanted to build on it too. Like, I don't know if I can think of a movie that over the course of my life that has grown on me more.
It's
not that I didn't like it the first time, but I did. It is like a nest. It's a hard movie to like at first.
Yeah.
Like it is a hard because it keeps you at arm's length with some of the characters, and it is just mean and loud.
There's not many likable characters.
Everybody's yelling at each other, like they're just angry the whole time.
But don't you kind of go through life and realize there's not that many likable people?
And I think that's the other thing too.
Oh, is that right?
That's the other thing too. Is maybe that, but there is a little bit to it of finding an acceptance in a world that isn't going to be to your liking all the time, and that is sometimes going to be shit. And there are a couple characters in here who find their own little slice of paradise in the movie.
It's true.
And there is almost a wisdom in Day of that as you get older that maybe you appreciate more, which is as you realize like you can't control everything, you can't control what other people do. Yeah. Like you kind of just have to carve out your own little slice of land. And
yes, it's going to be intruded on occasion.
Yes.
But like don't lose it.
Yes.
I love that. And I think I'm glad you mentioned that too, because my favorite scene in the whole movie, and one of my favorite scenes in the history of film, period, ever, is the monologue that we get from Terry Alexander about like, let's get the hell out of here and have some kids and tell them don't come back.
Yeah.
Leave this shit alone. Start over. Do not do what we did. Like that sequence, that monologue he gives to Laurie Cardille is so good.
It's a movie that, like, with all of its meanness and it does try to find those moments of humanity in it too, and they're small, but you have to hold on to those throughout the other movie. And that leads me to another thing: is I think Joe Pilato is incredible.
Oh my god,
in this movie, and like
he's insane. He's a cartoon almost.
It's weird saying it's like my favorite performance in a Romero movie, but it might be my favorite performance in a Romero movie because.
It's gotten better too.
Yes, yeah.
It got panned for a long time.
Right.
There was a lot of criticism about Joe Pilato's like performance in this, and I don't want to do too much of this. I want to kind of I guess beat around the bush.
That's fine.
You tell me in the last 10 years that this performance is not terribly realistic.
Right.
Because I've fucking seen it from multiple people.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting too far into it, but
that's it.
There are people like this who exist on the planet and who would behave like this and who would manipulate others to following them despite acting like this. That's all I'm going to say.
But that's another thing, too, is I guess I'll beat around the bush here a little bit, too. Like, there are people that are like, George today, like, I wonder what he'd say today if he saw this. He already said it.
He said it in 85.
Yes,
that's the thing is, like, that's what George, Romero, and Carpenter.
Yes, they already said it.
They're futurists.
Yeah.
They didn't realize. I don't think they intended on it.
No.
But the scariest shit in terms of horror films and the stuff that I think holds up the best is the stuff that was like a warning.
Yeah.
And we're living through some of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're living through Day of the Dead right now. Like the zombies aren't here. Like
right.
Like this is we're talking about genre filmmaking, and the best genre filmmaking in my opinion is the stuff that either makes you laugh and have a great time and you can throw it on at a party and just everybody's having a good time, or the stuff that makes you go, wow, and think about it for days on end, right? Those are my two favorite things, and I think I've represented both those things I love about horror on my list, and I think you have too. And what Romero did with this movie, I think even more than like Dawn or Night, was paint a picture of like where we're headed, without beating us over the head with like humanity bad. It was kind of like so what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
We're almost there. Give it another 10 years or so, 20 years, it'll happen. Yeah, I don't know. They Live is another perfect example of that. Like, we're kind of there in a lot of ways. So I don't know. Day of the Dead's amazing. It's a perfect film. Yeah, I don't know. What else? Anything else?
I'm good.
Howard Sherman, Bub. Oh my God.
Oh, we didn't even talk. Yeah, we did not talk about Bub. But we didn't even talk about the score to this movie. This is one of my favorite
all-time
scores.
favorite score.
Yeah, period. Yes.
No, it was Waxwork that kind of really made you appreciate it in
Yes.
a way. Yes, same here. Like I always loved it. But I did not realize how much I loved it until I listened to it isolated.
Yeah.
I went, oh my God. This is...
It fits well with that set. The Florida setting really works in this movie. Yeah.
Well, what's weird is it was written so that the score was written with that tropical stuff for a film that wasn't made, was the original Dave.
Yes.
Which, if you can read the script, it's fantastic. I'm actually very happy this is the version we got. Mm-hmm. I think that the day that was being made when they had a budget that was double this basically would have been great, but I'm happy that it worked out this way because it's a special, but the score is incredible. Anyway, yes.
We mentioned okay, so are you good on Day? Have we said enough about Day for now?
We both had that at number 2, so we can move on to our number 1s. I guess I'm moving on to mine.
You go to 1? Yeah.
So you've already talked about this one, The Thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was tough. It was either going to be Day or The Thing. And I went The Thing because a couple of reasons. I think The Thing is, like Day, it has a lot to say about humanity, and I think it's a universal theme that mistrust that you talked about that we're dealing with now, we've dealt with for, God, I mean, how long? Forever, it feels like. The Thing is just perfect, man. The score is fucking phenomenal. The direction is great. The effects are great. The performances are great.
Do you have a favorite? I'm curious your favorite. Performance, character in The Thing.
Yeah, it's actually Childs. It's Keith David. I love Kurt Russell in this one, and I love Wilford Brimley too. He's very good in this. But Keith David's my favorite because he's such a strong presence on screen and everything he does that you want to trust him no matter what.
Yeah.
And so for him to be the last man standing with McCready at the end is the perfect choice because you want to believe he's human, right? But there's that small party that goes, I don't know. He was gone for a while. And so you're immediately thrown into the distrust thing. Because distrust only works if you actually trusted somebody to begin with. Right? Distrust doesn't work if you never trusted them.
Right.
I don't distrust people in my life that I don't know that well because I didn't really trust them ever. It's almost like being when people use disappointment too often, I think, in the vernacular. You can't be disappointed in something if you didn't think it was going to be good to begin with. Right? Really? I mean, if you weren't interested in it or you didn't have any sort of stake in it, or anything, disappointment's not the right. You just didn't think it was good.
Yes,
you weren't disappointed.
Yeah.
Now, if you were going into it with high hopes or with some sort of, that's disappointment. So mistrust is the same thing, in my opinion. You can't mistrust somebody, or you can't be disappointed by somebody's deception or whatever if you didn't really know them or care about what they, I don't know. Maybe that's just me because I know some people are super I love everybody and. Most people I'm we'll see.
Fair enough, yeah.
It's not a negative thing, it's just, we'll see. I don't know you. If my neighbor 6 doors down, who I've talked to maybe once, and it was hey, how are you doing? I don't know. What's something horrible? Stab somebody. I'd be like, oh shit, that's crazy. If you did, I'd be like, that sucks.
Yeah,
what the hell? Why you gotta stab people? So you know what I mean? There's a certain, but The Thing is just it's a perfect film. There's a few on my list, I think, in my opinion, the top 4 or so are perfect films.
You mentioned, the top 4 are your favorite movies.
The top four on this list that I've listed tonight. So Lost Boys, Aliens, Day of the Dead, and The Thing are in my top 10 films ever, period. They're the 4 horror movies that fit into my top 10. Not too shabby. The rest are different genres, but yeah, just I love The Thing. It's I could sit here and talk about it all day, but I don't know. So many people have liked to dissect this movie at this point. I'm hoping that Carpenter's last words on his deathbed one day, hopefully years from now.
Yeah.
I hope he lives forever. I hope he lives past me at this point. I hope his last words are like, somebody's like, can you finally tell us who was the thing at the end of The Thing? And I hope he just says, fuck you. And that's it. That's my hope.
That's beautiful.
Yes. Thank you. Your number one, Tim.
My number one, it's been a theme, horror comedy, Evil Dead 2.
Yes. I knew it would be the one, but why?
This, I would, if you sat me down and were like, Tim, what's your favorite movie of all time? It would be this, or maybe Ghostbusters, or maybe, weirdly enough, Spider-Man 2. So here's the thing with this movie. So when I was younger, there are two directors I point to as like the directors. You've talked about it a little bit, and you've touched on it with Carpenter, but the directors that made me realize, like, oh, there's more to this than just watching a movie. Like, you can learn about how they shot this movie, and you can learn about people make this. You can learn like how they did this, like how they moved the camera that way, like how they did the Deadite. Like,
you learn that it's an art form.
Yes,
and it's people that collaborate and create something. Yeah,
and you learn something about the cast too. It is the first one is Kevin Smith. In his movies, his early movies, he's kind of the first one. And the other thing too is it came like I'm talking about the beginning of like DVD, because Kevin Smith was also someone who was very open with his process and what he was doing. And his commentaries were a lot of times funnier than his movies. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like his commentaries, like his Mallrats commentary is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But the other director is Sam Raimi. And I think the other thing, too, is the amount of, if you recall, the amount of editions of this movie and the other Evil Dead movies that were floating around on DVD. There were like, there were a ton of them. But like I would sit there and I would watch the special features. I'd listen to the commentaries. And I would feel like I knew these people. And a lot of it is because, like, I do feel like I know these because they're Midwestern boys. They're Michigan boys.
I remember watching the special edition of Evil Dead 1. Mm-hmm. The Necronomicon book, the rubbery, gross thing.
Yes.
And that smelled weird.
Yeah.
And I remember like watching that Anchor Bay release and going like, and now I understand how they did this. Like I get the effects. Like that was cool. It was a cool experience. Yeah.
And part of the fun, too, of the Evil Dead movies, especially those first couple, well, the third one too, is like finding the seams and finding the mistakes.
Yeah.
And like pointing it out. And the thing I like about it is, and you get a sense of it in a lot of the commentaries, is like you can feel smarter or like smarter for pointing it out, but like they know it's in there too.
Yeah,
like
they realized. Yeah,
they're very open with it, and like that's part of the fun. But I'll also point out is like the first time you sit down and watch those first couple Evil Dead movies, I get sucked into it. I don't notice that. Like, I don't notice the flaws.
Yeah, no.
It's on rewatches.
Yeah. Evil Dead 1 was the first one I saw. Was that your first, or was it Evil Dead 2? A lot of people saw Evil Dead 2 before 1.
I think I was 1, because the first... Okay. Yeah, I remember watching... So that was another thing I would watch these, like, this was like a party.
Yeah.
Like a get-together. Like, the Evil Dead movies are great, like... At least back in my day, were great get-together movies. I don't know about anymore if people still have Evil Dead parties, but like you could knock out 1, 2, 3 all in a night.
Yeah, they're not super long movies or super. Yeah. But I remember watching one and going like, oh my god, this is insane. This is like the goriest, nastiest. This is like next level, you know. And that version that I had some like bonus stuff on it, or and then seeing how they made some of that stuff and going, oh my god, how cool is that? Like I was totally like, I was so zoned into the movie that like it's an obvious effect when you go back and watch it with that lens. But the first time seeing it, I'm not thinking about it from that perspective. I'm just caught up in the insanity and then the craziness of these demons running around and trees attacking people and all sorts. No, I'm with you. It's you don't think about that, but if you want, like, once you kind of expand your horizons a little bit in terms of like, oh well, they accomplished that doing that, like that. Yeah. That's how they made that thing. Yeah, it's so cool. It's
The reason I like 2 better than 1 is I'm more. It's the physical comedy, and that leads me to my other point. Is I almost don't know if like maybe God, I sound old this episode, but gives it like how important Bruce Campbell was back in the day, like just how how big of a deal Ash was to me, like the character of Ash. And 2 is where Ash becomes Ash.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
it's like Alien.
Yeah, like you go back to 1, it's weird. Like he's kind of
like a guy.
He's like a guy, kind of a weenie.
He's fine.
But. Yeah, but then you watch him grow throughout 2, and he becomes the boomstick toting, chainsaw wielding like Ash.
He's the hero.
He's Ash, but he's still. And this is my favorite. Like he's still just a dummy.
He sucks. Yeah,
he's still just a big dumbass.
He's great, but he also kind of sucks at his job.
But that scene in 2, where he's breaking plates over his head, and he's in the kitchen. And like the things like the stuffed animal heads are laughing at it.
Oh yeah, the moose head or whatever.
Yeah,
the deer head.
Yes,
yeah.
It is one of the great, other than like silent cinema, like one of the great physical comedy scenes of all time. Like it's just start to finish. The whole thing is just hilarious, and Bruce Campbell is incredible in it, and Raimi is known for beating up his actors, and nobody does it better than Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
So just watch it that, and then it's one of those movies too that I always go back to. Like, there's a feeling associated with it that is deeper than like just enjoying it as a movie. Like it's a feeling of watching it with my friends late at night, and I like that's something I can't replicate.
You'll never get it back.
I'll never get it back.
But it's still there. It's still yeah.
But I'll never get it. Like that is a feeling that I won't have with any other new movie ever again. You know what I mean?
No.
Like that feeling of discovery in like just goofing on it with friends.
Yes.
And I'm not sad about it. I'm actually bringing it up in like I love that I have that memory.
Yes.
And that is something like with this movie that I just like I can't separate it from that movie. So that's why it's my number 1 movie, and it's probably my favorite movie of all time, next to like I said, Ghostbusters.
I love that.
Yeah, so great. All right, there we go.
That's it, man. We did it somehow.
Let's any honorable mentions that
I mean, I'll run through a couple here quickly. Fright Night, I mean, like, you know, the holy trinity of vampire films was in the 80s, from 85 through 87.
Yeah.
Fright Night, Near Dark, and Lost Boys. I love Fright Night. I think it's a fantastic film. If this is a top 20 list, it would easily be on there with the rest of these. It just got edged out a little bit. Night of the Creeps, another one. What a fun, meta, crazy, zany horror film. Fred Dekker made the cut already for me with Monster Squad. Not quite with Night of the Creeps. This is another one that came later for me. I didn't see Night of the Creeps until it was not available at my local video store. And I don't think it came out on DVD until like a ways into people realizing they could release DVDs for cult movies and make some money.
Yeah.
But once I saw it, I was like, hell yeah, this movie rules. And it still does. Tom Atkins. We've mentioned him before. He's wonderful. He's great in this. My favorite Tom Atkins role is Night of the Creeps.
Okay.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I've got that on my honorable mention too.
What a wonderful film. You know, just so much fun.
Maybe the best title song of all time.
Oh
too.
God, the Dickies. You know, I think I have that one on vinyl now. Just what a fun movie. It knows what it is. It's absolutely ridiculous and over the top, and it's so much fun. And so it's another really great gateway horror movie. It's great. Dream Warriors, we talked about a little bit. Dream Warriors on the list for me. The best Nightmare movie. Nightmare is my least favorite franchise of the big horror franchises, slasher franchises, certainly. That being said, Nightmare is the best of the bunch, and I think it's 3 is the best bunch. I think it's really a great movie. God, what a beautifully imaginative movie in terms of what it does with the dream sequences. Just like really, really, really opens the door to some really cool stuff. And in my opinion, the best of the bunch. Anglin's at his top of his game. Just great movie. Jason Lives, I talked about a little bit. Love that movie. I think it's great. Tom McLaughlin is maybe the best director in the history of the franchise. But you know, it's up there for me. It's just stylistically, it's great, but 4 just kind of beat it out. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. I mean, we talked about it. It's great. I love it. And then The Fly. Just a haunting film. Just absolutely. When you watch it, you want to take a shower afterwards, which is great for what it's trying to accomplish, but also makes it hard for me to like throw it in a top 10 because it's so. I don't know, because like Day of the Dead makes me want to shower too, but there's also a glimmer of hope in Day of the Dead. I don't really get that from The Fly.
Yeah,
it kind of just feels like everything is boned. Man's folly has ruined it all. So there's so many other good ones, like Hellraiser. I could throw in there. I mean, there's so many good ones.
This is
it's tough. I don't know.
So like these honorable mentions, and I'm gonna try to find some that haven't been talked about because a lot of them are on my honorable mentions. But these are all movies I love too. That's the thing. It's like I love like 40 or 50 movies from this decade.
I know.
Christine was mentioned.
Yeah, great movie.
Killer Clowns. Do you want to give a shout out to Maximum Overdrive?
It's so much fun.
It is
a great party movie.
It is a great party movie. It is King at his most coked out and insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good movie, but it is.
But it kind of is.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a certain something.
It's like nothing you will have seen and will see.
Somebody gets attacked by like a deli meat cutter thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like one of those like weird saws. Yeah.
I also, you mentioned Night of the Creeps. I also want to mention Night of the Comet.
Yeah.
Which is a fun little 80s inspiration for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If you're a Buffy fan and you haven't seen it.
It's got some Buffy vibes for sure. No question.
Yeah. Phenomena.
Oh, yeah.
I like Phenomena a lot.
Is that your favorite non-Suspiria Argento movie? That's a tough one, right? Because for me, it's Phenomena or Inferno. It's one or the other. I like both.
Yeah.
Oh, Deep Red.
That was the other one. Deep Red was was my 2,
Deep Red,
and then Inferno. Or no, then maybe
Phenomena.
And then
I think
Inferno.
you and I have the same top 4.
Yeah. Psycho 2.
Oh,
made my honorable mention. It's one of my favorite.
I've never seen a Psycho sequel.
I've got a couple sequels. Texas. I think Psycho 2 you would like.
I've never seen a
Psycho
sequel.
2 is kind of a little wink as well.
Oh, wow.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. At times, I think I like it better than 1. But
it's so different.
It is. It is.
They're like different universe. Yeah. I like 2.
Someone mentioned The Blob, but I love Chuck Russell's The Blob.
It's so sweet.
The Hunger is another vampire movie that I think from the 80s.
Bowie?
Yes.
Yep.
Again, the Monster
It's a unique vampire film. Which is the best.
Slumber Party Massacre 2 is another great goofy party movie with Thomas Illich.
You like that one more than I do, but you saw it at the right age.
That is another watch with friends movie.
Yes, I did not see it until we watched it for the show.
Yes. People of Resident they're Shocker. I didn't see any with Shocker. Pumpkinhead.
Shocker.
Was Shocker 89, I believe.
Was it really?
Yes, Shocker was 89. It was right on that border.
Okay.
Pumpkinhead, I think, is actually a great,
super cool
film.
Fairy tale horror story.
God, I've got so many. The Howling, Gremlins.
I know, dude.
I mean,
that's why I cut
get out of here with this.
A dozen off of this honorable mentions because I'm like, I'm going to spend an hour here.
Street Trash. All right, I'll end on Street Trash. Oh, you know what? The Stuff. You remember The Stuff?
The Stuff and Street Trash are like the ultimate. Yeah. If you want to add a third Chud.
Chud, yeah.
I love Chud.
So
it's not good, but
the next decade we do might be a little easier.
Are we doing the 90s?
I think we should just keep going.
I mean, we did 70s, 80s. Let's
I'm
not
having
get
fun
crazy
with this.
It. Yeah. So we'll do the 90s next. And I don't think it's going to break us mentally like this one did.
We have almost gone 2 hours on this one.
Dude, you knew that was going to happen.
I knew it was going to happen. Oh, I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm saying it like...
This is like a beast of an episode. We could split this into 2 probably and just get away with that.
This is being edited. This is being thrown together early morning.
Yeah, you'll hear my post-bathroom break.
Yeah. Oh, that is not going to get it. Oh, you know what? I probably can get... I'm not going to talk. Yeah. Let's do the 90s next.
Okay, 90s.
I think we have a pretty good idea what our number 1 will be.
Yeah. I got to talk to you about that, by the way.
Okay.
Anyway, yes.
All right.
So that was our top 10 1980s. Guys, it was a journey for us. We'll probably have regrets as we sleep on this soon because it's late. Yep. But we hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget, send us in your lists. Just because we talked about ours Doesn't mean it's too late for you to talk about yours. We love to hear from you. Top 10 1970s or 80s, or if you want to send us your top 10 90s ahead of time, go for it. Don't do 2000s. We're not there yet. Let's settle down.
We'll get there.
Let's settle down. Write them down. Don't send them to us. But top 10 90s is next. We cannot wait to talk about that. I've got some. This is going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be. I feel like with the 70s, I felt pretty straightforward in what I wanted to include. It was pretty easy for me, I feel like.
Our 80s lists got similar towards the end, I think. But
80s
that's
was
okay.
brutal just in terms of how many I love.
Yeah.
This one I think is going to be a nice middle ground where I'm pretty sure I've got, I would say, max like 15 that are possible. Maybe.
I think narrowing it down will be
much easier.
The tough one might be ranking some of them, but
that's going to be tougher because I think a lot of them just kind of float.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But please join us for that. horrormovieyearbook@gmail.com. At HM Yearbook on Twitter. We're on Instagram, Facebook. Follow us on all that stuff. Check out our Discord, Midwest Podnet. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. And Tim.
Stay scared, everybody.